A crisp morning at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. Fluorescent lights shimmered across the polished stone floors. The hurried footsteps of hundreds of passengers blended into a familiar rhythm. Amid the bustling crowd, a black woman in a navy blue suit appeared, and for a moment the world seemed to pause. She didn't need to announce her name, no flashy jewelry, no extravagant flair, yet every step she took sent a clear message. She was here to take charge, not to ask for permission. Her name was April Jackson. She was 42 years old and the CEO of Jackson Dynamics, known in the tech world as the one who brings dead startups back to life. She didn't just save them from bankruptcy, she transformed them into money-making empires. In tech circles, the name April Jackson was a golden seal on every wall of fame. Her face, serene and unreadable, rarely appeared in the media, but when it did, no one dared to forget it. That morning, her outfit spoke volumes without a single word. The suit was perfectly tailored, hugging her frame without a single loose thread. A gold watch shimmered under the lights, not to flaunt wealth, but to make a statement. Her time was not cheap. Her braided hair was neatly tied into a bun, a symbol of complete control. Over her shoulder, she carried a logo-free leather bag. Every grain and shine of the leather radiated the quiet confidence of someone who didn't need attention to feel powerful. Her destination was seat 2A in first class on Flight 214 to Seattle, and in front of her stood the first test of the day. At the Horizon Air first-class check-in counter, Tyler Grayson looked like he had just woken up from a nap. His shirt was wrinkled, tie crooked, and name tag hanging loosely. He looked like a rough draft of an airport employee. His eyes were fixed on the computer screen, and his voice came out as if each word was a burden. "Ticket, please." April didn't explain or introduce herself. She slid the ticket forward. The print was bold and clear. First class, 9:15 a.m., Jackson, April. Tyler glanced at it and scanned the code once. Nothing. He frowned and tried again. The screen blinked. Still empty. Without an apology or any effort to check further, he shrugged and handed the ticket back like it was a coffee receipt. His tone was flat. "Not seeing your name in the system, you're probably in the wrong line. Economy's over there." There was no direct insult, but it was more than enough to ignite something. April remained still, her expression unchanged, but in her eyes, the ice had started to crack. And when someone like her, someone used to being welcomed by boardrooms and signing multi-million-dollar contracts, is dismissed with a hollow phrase and a dismissive glance, this is no longer about a boarding pass. And what about you? If you were belittled, if your dignity were trampled by the tone and gaze of those who believed you didn't belong, what would you do? Step back or stand tall and push back? People didn't step back. Not a single wasted movement. She stood firm, like a stone pillar in the middle of a storm. Her voice was low but sharp as a blade. "I purchased a first-class ticket. It's confirmed. Check again." Tyler smirked, a smile that barely masked his arrogance. His eyes swept over her like she was a bothersome stain, then quickly looked away, as if afraid to face the truth. "I already checked. You're not on the list. If you don't move, I'll call security." At that moment, he turned to greet a white man in a polo shirt. His voice instantly softened, smooth as silk. "Good morning, sir. Welcome." The contrast sliced through the air like a knife, and it didn't just hit April, it spread across the entire area. A woman wrapped in a cashmere scarf sighed loudly. A businessman in an Armani suit glanced at his watch, fingers tapping his luggage in a rhythm of impatience. The feeling of injustice began to spread. No one said a word, but everyone felt it. April opened her phone, not hurried, not panic, just the calm motion of someone who had power and knew exactly what she was doing. She pulled up her confirmation email. Date, time, seat number, 2A. The Horizon Air logo clearly displayed. She held the screen up to Tyler, her eyes unwavering. "Explain this." Tyler snatched the phone from her hand. The motion was quick, almost nervous, though he disguised it with a dismissive glance. His eyes skimmed the screen for less than a second, as if looking any longer would burn him with the truth laid bare before him. Then he laughed, a short, cold, hollow laugh. No reading, no analysis, no effort to check. Just one act of arrogance. He tossed the phone back. It slid across the plastic counter like something filthy, as if April's very existence was an offense that needed to be erased. "System glitch or a fake. Doesn't match. You need to leave." Each word he spoke wasn't just a rejection. It was a verdict. No one needed to hear more. No evidence required. In that moment, April was no longer a customer, no longer the woman who had paid for a first-class seat with her own money. In their eyes, she had become a problem that needed to be removed. The air seemed frozen in place. Every breath inside the terminal felt compressed. The eyes of those nearby couldn't linger, but they couldn't look away either. Because they knew something had just happened, something wrong. Then came the sound of heels striking the cold stone floor. Lindsay Carter. She appeared like a steel shadow, hair pulled into a tight ponytail, precise to the point of intimidation, eyes sharp as sharpened metal, arms crossed, high-heeled boots hitting the ground with the finality of a judge's gavel. She didn't ask with concern. She asked like a security system that had just flagged an intruder in a restricted zone. "What's going on here?" Her voice was high, shrill, and cold as an alarm siren. Lindsay's eyes locked onto April like a biometric scanner. But she wasn't searching for truth. She was scanning for fault. Her gaze came with a default assumption. The woman standing in front of her must be the problem. April didn't step back. She didn't blink. She slowly turned her head, eyes calm but sharp as glass. "Your system is wrong. I bought a first-class ticket. Fix it. No anger, no pleading. Just a statement, cold, firm, and clear as ice." Lindsay snatched the ticket from April's hand. The motion was rough, nearly violent. She scanned it. The machine beeped, a flat, emotionless sound. The screen lit up with a message, "Denied, not verified." Lindsay showed no surprise, no confusion. It was as if she had expected it, or wanted it to happen. She pressed her lips together and read the message aloud, like a judge reading a verdict in a courtroom that had no defense attorneys. "Nothing found. I'm sorry, but you are not permitted to board." No explanation, no effort to double-check. Tyler now stood behind her with arms crossed, a slight smirk on his lips like someone who had just won a petty victory. "I already told you, you should leave, otherwise I'm calling security." His voice was even but dripping with smugness, as if he had just neutralized a threat, as if his small slice of authority had just proven itself by pushing a woman out of a space she wasn't meant to occupy. April didn't react. She didn't cry, she didn't rage, she didn't beg. She just stood there, silent, eyes unblinking, like a camera recording every movement, every frown, every gesture, preserving it all as evidence for a battle yet to come. And it was that silence, the way she didn't break but observed, that started to make them uneasy. Tyler glanced at Lindsay. His eyes no longer carried the same confidence. The air thickened. Every footstep, every announcement, every whisper from nearby passengers seemed to compress into a dense, explosive stillness. Every eye in the terminal turned to one person, April. And she did not retreat, she didn't flinch, she didn't lower her gaze, she didn't need to shout, she didn't need to call out the injustice. Her behavior had already written the indictment. She stood tall, her frame seemingly slender but emanating a strange and powerful gravity. Her eyes burned with a fire that had been extinguished 1,000 times, now blazing back to life brighter than ever. "You are making a serious mistake," she said, her voice cold as steel fresh from the forge. "Fix it, now, or I will handle it myself." The room froze. Tyler, the employee in the neat suit with the fake smile, let out a short laugh. It was a dry, glassy sound, shrill and hollow. "Go ahead and try, ma'am," he sneered, as if watching a performance for his amusement. Next to him, Lindsay said nothing, but her fingers hovered over the radio. Her proud gaze made it clear. One signal, and security would descend like wolves. But April did not back down. Every step she took toward the counter seemed to cut through the air with deadly calm. No noise, no theatrics, but her authority was suffocatingly real. From her coat pocket she pulled out a phone, not to complain, but to command. "Marcus," she said, her voice low and razor-sharp, "I'm at the Horizon gate. They're blocking me. Valid ticket. Handle it." On the other end, Marcus Reed, the airline's executive vice president and her closest ally, gave a one-word reply. "Understood. 2 minutes." No questions, no clarification, just absolute spine-chilling trust. April hung up. Her gaze locked onto Tyler, a look so piercing that even the thickest suit couldn't shield him from the feeling of being completely exposed. Tyler began to squirm. His fingers tapped frantically at the keyboard. The screen flickered wildly before flashing a message in bright, blood-red text. "System error, unable to verify." He slammed his hand on the counter. A heavy thud rang out like an alarm bell. A nearby child flinched and retreated into their mother's arms, clutching a worn teddy bear. At that very moment, Lindsay's radio burst to life with a loud, piercing static. She brought it to her ear, and her once icy eyes suddenly widened as if jolted by electricity. A voice came through, urgent, tense, offering no instruction but filled with warning. Lindsay's face turned pale. Her eyes darted to Tyler, no longer defiant but clearly panicked. Her hand gripped the edge of the counter as if it were the only thing keeping her upright in the face of an oncoming. "What the hell is going on?" Tyler nearly shouted. Sweat broke across his temple. He hammered the keyboard in a frenzy, but the system seemed cursed. Terrors multiplying, windows popping up like a digital flood threatening to drown him. The chaos spread like an oil spill. "We have a connecting flight? What kind of operation is this? This is unbelievable. Is there anyone in charge here?" Complaints surged like waves. A crowd began to form, pressure mounting in an already suffocating space. And at the center of that storm, April stood still. She didn't need to speak. She didn't need to move. It was her silence that struck the hardest. Every pair of eyes, Lindsay's, Tyler's, the crowd's, were locked onto her. One woman, small, quiet, yet causing an entire system to tremble under the weight of her silent fury. Suddenly, the terminal's loudspeakers crackled with a harsh announcement that sliced through the tension. "Urgent notice. Flight 214 to Seattle is temporarily delayed. Passengers, please await further updates." A storm of rage twisted across Tyler's face. He nearly roared, "What the hell is this? Is this a joke?" He pounded at the keyboard like he could force the system into submission, but the screen remained still and cold as ice. The entire machine seemed to have turned against him. Lindsay's radio blared again, this time loud and unmistakable. He turned away quickly, whispering in a panic. "Yes, she's still here. Check the VIP list." "I don't have access to that section." She didn't finish before a wave of passenger outrage overwhelmed her. A man shouted, "I paid for first class, and this is how I'm treated? Who's responsible here?" A young mother pushing a stroller shook her head bitterly. "Unbelievable! This is supposed to be an airline? An April?" She stood her ground, solid as stone in a storm, her small bag resting by her feet, untouched, as if it were part of a soldier who had long since become one with the battlefield. She didn't speak, didn't flinch, yet her silence fed the chaos, turning it into something uncontrollable. Lindsay looked disoriented, like someone who had lost her compass. Tyler looked ready to crawl under the counter and disappear. Then the crowd parted. A man rushed through, panting, tie askew, drenched in sweat. His Horizon Air staff badge swung wildly from his chest like a flashing emergency beacon. Greg Hull, Horizon's gate supervisor. His voice was rushed, urgent. "Lou Jackson. April Jackson?" April didn't respond right away. She simply nodded, a subtle gesture, yet it held a weight that froze Greg in place. "Ma'am, I sincerely apologize. There was a minor system issue. We're resolving it right now." April's eyes didn't soften. They were cold and penetrating. Her voice rang out clear, each word hammered into the minds of everyone listening. "A system issue? Then why was I denied boarding to begin with? I want an explanation." Greg faltered. His hands clenched so tightly they turned pale. There was a flag in the system. It may have been an automatic error. We're removing it as we speak." "A flag?" She cut in. Her voice rose just enough to carry across the terminal. Each syllable struck like a blade tapping on a shame no one dared to name. "My ticket is valid." "But you didn't believe that. Why?" Tyler had now shrunk behind the counter, head bowed, shoulders hunched, as if another look from her might cause him to collapse. Lindsay still clutched her radio like it was a last thread holding her authority together. Greg swallowed hard, struggling to maintain his composure. I don't know, ma'am, but headquarters is reviewing it now. I've already made the call." "Not enough?" April. Her voice flared like a long-smothered fire, powerful yet without the need to shout. "You can't write this off as a technical glitch. I want a name, the person responsible, and a reason. Right now." Silence. A heavy, absolute silence, as if the entire terminal had stopped breathing. Complaints died down like a receding tide. A child stopped crying mid-sob. And at the center of it all, only the ticking of the watch on April's wrist, counting down, tick, tick, as the truth prepared to surface. Greg's radio suddenly erupted in his hand. He flinched, nearly dropping it. As he brought it to his ear, his face turned white, like he had just received a verdict from the Supreme Court. A voice cut through, sharp as a cold blade. Greg lowered the radio, his voice caught in his throat. "Miss Jackson, the system logs have been restored. Your ticket has been verified. You are cleared to board." He bowed slightly, hands trembling. I'd be honored to escort you to the gate." "No," April cut in. One word. It landed like a whip cracking through the concourse. "You're not taking me anywhere until I know why your staff, The first glance assumed I was a fraud. Greg was speechless. His throat moved up and down, Adam's apple rising and falling like a man on the verge of collapse. This came from higher up, I swear. Give me 2 minutes, I'll get you answers. April crossed her arms. Her eyes remained still, cold blades scanning every movement in what had become a chaotic stage. The watch on her wrist ticked steadily, like a countdown to a bomb no one wanted to see explode. Behind the counter, Tyler and Lindsay looked like cornered animals. The screen in front of them blinked non-stop with red alerts. Access denied. Data not found. The desk phone rang, loud and shrill, echoing down the terminal like a fire alarm in a collapsing factory. Tyler slammed the keyboard, his voice distorted by panic. This damned system. He yanked at his tie, as if he were choking the last shred of authority from his throat. Lindsay glanced over, her voice a tense hiss. Shut up, Ty. Did you even hear the radio? She's not just some passenger. We're screwed. The fury in the crowd only intensified. Passengers began pushing closer, their shouts rising like floodwaters breaching a dam. I have a 10 o'clock meeting. You think this is funny? I paid for my ticket. If this isn't fixed, I'm suing. Greg raised his hand, trying to calm the crowd. Please, everyone, we're handling it. But his voice was thin, a matchstick in a storm. His words were drowned by the rising roar of outrage. And only one person stood still at the eye of the storm, April. She did not flinch, she did not step back, she showed no emotion, she stood like a monument in the ruins. Every gaze she held, from a panicked Tyler to a disoriented Lindsay to a trembling Greg, felt pinned in stone. In the crowd, a woman whispered to her husband, "Who is she?" A businessman silently raised his phone, recording it all. His lens followed every movement, every furrowed brow, every glimmer of a truth no longer hidden. The space in front of the gate felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow, and the only person with a hand on the release valve was April. Suddenly, Greg's radio crackled again. This time, there was no static, no ambiguity, just a voice, clear and cold, leaving no room for doubt. Jackson, Chief Executive Officer of Jackson Dynamics, VIP status was hidden in the system, staff error. Let her board immediately. Greg spun around. His eyes went wide, as if he'd just seen a ghost. He rushed toward her, breathless. Miss Jackson, your ticket is confirmed, first class, highest priority. We have no idea how this happened. You didn't ask, April interrupted, her voice like a blade striking the table. Each word cut silently, deeply. You and them, you judged. No verification, no investigation, just assumption. She raised a hand and pointed directly at Tyler and Lindsay, no shouting required, just a gesture. Tyler instantly dropped his head, hands stuffed in his pockets like a child stripped bare in front of a classroom. Lindsay, once icy and poised, now clutched the counter, her lips pale, eyes distant like someone about to collapse. Greg stammered like a man about to be executed. Waited, we'll find out what happened, I promise. Avery nodded, but it wasn't forgiveness. It was a statement. You will, she said, her final words landing like a gavel, and you'll report back to me. Without waiting, she bent down and lifted her bag onto her shoulder. The motion was fluid, decisive. Like this confrontation was just another battle in a long campaign she knew all too well. She walked away without looking back. Behind her, an entire system still trembled in the aftermath of an earthquake named April Jackson. April approached the gate. Her hand gripped the strap of her bag, each step steady and calm, like a general walking off the field after a victory. Then she stopped. A smooth pivot on her heel. She turned back, Her gaze was an arrow of ice, slicing through the thick air of shame and panic. "One more thing." Her voice was low, firm, a final strike, precise and absolute. "Those two, they are not to engage with any other passengers until they learn respect. Make sure that happens." Greg nodded rapidly, his face stiff like carved wood struck by a hammer. "Yes, ma'am. They'll be removed from duty. Retraining starts today." April nodded again, not in approval, but as confirmation that her words had become law. She boarded the plane, first on. Her posture was straight, head held high. Every footstep echoed softly across the jet bridge, each one a quiet drumbeat declaring a clear, unwavering creed. No apologies, no pleading, just truth. Behind her, the balance of power had shifted. Tyler and Lindsay were removed from the game they once thought they controlled. The decision-makers had become the spectators. Greg, who once barked orders like an officer, was now scrambling, his radio alive with static, his phone ringing off the hook. He was no longer in command, only chasing the remnants of control already lost. April entered the first-class cabin, spacious, refined to every detail. Soft leather seats, gentle lighting, everything designed for someone who belonged there. And today, that someone was her. The flight attendant bowed slightly, offering a tight smile. "Welcome aboard, Miss Jackson." But the voice trembled, and the eyes were cautious. Word had spread. The story had traveled like wildfire through every level of the system. April didn't recline. She sat upright, eyes forward, her mind replaying the battle just fought. She remembered every interrupted sentence, every doubtful look, every moment her dignity was denied by invisible bias. Her phone buzzed, a message from Marcus. "E good?" April replied. "Good, clean takedown," he responded with a fist emoji. And then, for the first time that day, she allowed herself a smile. A real one, not long, not boastful, but in her eyes there was light, the light of someone who had proved her worth without compromise. That afternoon, at O'Hare Airport. The Horizon Air Gate looked like a battlefield after the storm. Papers scattered, staff quietly cleaning up. Signal lights blinked like the remnants of a silent coup. Tyler was pulled from duty. As he left the break room, he muttered under his breath, as if to reassure himself, "All this over nothing?" But the looks from his co-workers held no sympathy. Lindsay remained. Retraining began at 6 a.m., before all the lights in the conference room had come on. She sat in the back row, head down, fingers twisting her pen like she could puncture time itself. On the desk sat a printed excerpt from the system log, with her name clearly listed under improper protocol handling. There was no hiding, no one else to blame. At evening, Greg sat alone in his office, surrounded by unanswered emails, unsigned reports, and an air so heavy it weighed on his shoulders. He sent one message. "Ms. Jackson, the employees involved have been suspended. We've launched a full internal review. Thank you for providing the data and for the necessary lesson we needed to learn." April read it. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. She simply nodded, a small gesture, but unmistakable. She didn't need to break the system. She only needed to reset it, with one sharp, silent cut, deep enough that it would never function the same way again. Seattle, the next afternoon. April stepped out of the jet bridge, the late-day sunlight catching in her hair. Marcus was waiting, hands in his pockets, grinning like a kid watching a superhero step off the screen. "Heard you made them sweat." "They deserved it," she said, never slowing her stride. "Lunch?" She shook her head, eyes fixed on the waiting car in the distance. Work first. I don't want them to forget. They need to remember. The next morning, inside Horizon Air's internal system, an urgent national bulletin was issued. Restructuring of passenger screening procedures. All staff must undergo implicit bias retraining. Hidden VIP status will now be encrypted to prevent discrimination. April Jackson's name appeared in the official memo, not as self-promotion, but as a warning. Whispers continued to ripple at the Horizon Air gate. Who is she that made the whole system stop? And the answer spread like a modern-day legend. April Jackson, the woman who made the airline industry bow its head. No outward displays of power, just truth and an unflinching gaze.